Humble Master, Online Life Preservation. As soon as Xu Tiange was wearing a book, he found himself wearing a cannon fodder that had not lived more than 10 chapters. And, on the brink of death. To be honest, if you wear books, can you give her a chance to choose her identity? Is it okay to die at the beginning? Later on, okay, considering that she has a good chance after coming, her identity as a cannon fodder is not unacceptable. But the question came again, why didn't anyone tell her that the newly entered sect was a demon sect? Except for her and her master, there is no third living creature found in the entire sect. What? Is she allowed to choose all the resources of the sect? Okay, the demon sect is not unable to compromise. But why is the demon sect being chased by everyone in the cultivation world? The demon sect didn't do anything wrong either. Besides, she is the head of a prestigious sect, doesn't she want face? Keywords of the novel. After joining the demon sect, she is chased by the Quanxiu Immortal realm without a pop-up window. After joining the demon sect, she is chased by the Quanxiu Immortal realm. Download the complete text. After joining the demon sect, she is chased by the Quanxiu Immortal realm. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Wearing books. Are you going to die? You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Xu Tiange opened his eyes, he saw the fierce face of a middle-aged man and his hand that had not yet been retracted. In just an instant, Xu Tiange found himself rapidly descending, with the wind whistling in his ears and the scenery in front of him receding. Gradually, the man on the edge of the cliff turned into a small black dot until he was completely invisible. Xu Tiange's face, which was cut by the wind and painful, brought him back to his senses and realized that he didn't seem to be dreaming. Xu Tiange turned around and almost scared her heart because she was falling into the abyss. The dark abyss was like an open mouth that could devour her in an instant. Xu Tiange was thumping with both hands and feet, but there was nothing around her except the air and the howling cold wind that she could catch. She wanted to cry for help, but as soon as she spoke, she spat out a mouthful of blood, as if an invisible pair of hands were tightly gripping her neck and unable to make a sound. Then, a cramp came from her chest, and she could only let herself land helplessly. After all, she had no other choice but to silently pray in her heart. At this moment, a large amount of memories suddenly flooded into her mind, causing her brain to swell slightly. Xu Tiange was heartbroken to find that she had actually worn a book. If she remembered correctly, it happened to be worn by Xu Lianyi, a super female supporting character in the cultivation literature she watched last night. Why is it said to be a super supporting actress? Because Xu Lianyi died before she lived for 10 chapters and was slapped off a cliff by the female lead's father. Xu Lianyi was originally the daughter of the rising leader of the Chaoyang sect. She was pampered and raised in the palm of her hand, and the resources in the sect were given priority to her use. During a treasure exploration in a secret realm, the Chaoyang Zhongli training team unfortunately encountered a 9th-level blazing beast. Xu Lianyi's parents guided the blazing beast away for everyone to facilitate their escape. By the time the elders found the two of them, they had already exhaled more and inhaled less. When they returned to the sect, they had not yet explained a few words before passing away. The father of the female protagonist Yu Qianquan, naturally became the new sect after being elected by everyone, and vowed to raise Xu Lianyi as his own biological daughter. Before Xu Lianyi could recover from the grief of losing her parents, she saw the true face of Yu and his daughter. Xu Lianyi's parents left behind a large amount of wealth, and it was precisely because of this that Yu Qianquan set his sights on her inheritance. Today, it was Yu who invited herself out and said she had just received a pot of spiritual tea and wanted to share it with Xu Lianyi. Unexpectedly, shortly after the tea was served, Xu Lianyi discovered that her spiritual energy had been blocked. Next, Yu Qianquan appeared and demanded the treasure of the Xu couple. Xu Lianyi's parents left her many life-saving items, and it was through these that she managed to escape to this cliff. If it weren't for the actions of the Soul Destruction sect, she wouldn't have died today. The memory ends here, and Xu Tiange also falls to the bottom of the cliff. Bang! Her body fell hard to the ground, raising dust around her. As the excruciating pain spread, Xu Tiange's eyes slowly closed uncontrollably. In a daze, she seemed to see a glowing figure, and then fell into darkness. Until Su Lianyi's breath was completely nowhere to be found, Yu Qianquan slowly turned around, and behind him stood an old man in a black robe who had transformed into a god. The old man covered most of his face with a hat, unable to see clearly. He wrapped his hands around his chest and asked lightly, "So, are you satisfied?" Yu Qianquan's originally gloomy face instantly put on a smile and said, "Please investigate whether she has really died." The old man let out a cold snort, but did not refuse. He closed his eyes and spread his divine sense, starting to explore. "Don't worry, she will definitely die, right? Who dares to interfere with my soul-destroying sect?" The entire valley echoed with the old man's questioning voice. In no time, a burst of laughter from a woman came from the bottom of the cliff. "I said, who is so inhumane, let's just kill, and even destroy people's divine souls. If you dare to be a member of the demon sect, then that makes sense. This little girl is destined to be with me. Today, I will take her away. The next day, when her wings are full, I will definitely seek revenge from your soul-destroying sect for this life. No one can save the person that the soul-destruction sect wants to kill." The old man reached out his hand and grabbed at the void at the bottom of the cliff as he spoke. The already unfathomable cliff roared with cracking and collapsing sounds, even the valley they were in shook. Yu Qianquan quickly propped up his protective shield and retreated to a far distance to avoid the after-effects of the spell during the transformation period from harming himself. "If your ancestor of the soul destruction sect comes, you may still be able to compete with me, but your little trick is not enough." As soon as the woman finished speaking, the shattered stones under the cliff were instantly gathered together by a force and turned into a huge stone ball, attacking the old man. Upon seeing this, the old man also offered his sword and struck at the boulder. Bang! Two spiritual powers collided, and the aftershocks shook in all directions. Wherever they went, trees, mountains, and rocks were all cut off at the waist. Yu Qianquan's protective shield was shattered in just a few breaths, and the old man freed up one hand and propped up a spiritual shield for him. As the aftermath dissipated, Yu Qianquan looked at the bottom of the cliff with an eager expression and said, "Ancestor, let's catch up quickly." The old man remained motionless in place, but Yu Qianquan couldn't help but fly forward and lightly patted his shoulder. "Ancestor, hurry up." Puff. The old man spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed softly. "Grandfather." Seeing this, Yu Qianquan no longer cared about chasing the people at the bottom of the cliff. After all, he couldn't even defeat those who were in the stage of transforming into gods. Killing him was just a matter of using his fingers. Yu Qianquan quickly took out a flying boat and fled with the old man. The flying boat and the two of them quickly left. Before leaving, he gave a fierce glance at the bottom of the cliff. When he found an opportunity, he would definitely smash the bottom of the cliff. And the people at the bottom of the cliff, who were feared by the heavens and earth, remained silent for a long time. There is a rich group of immortal mountains in the Quanxiu Immortal realm, where spiritual energy is abundant, and 4th and 5th level spiritual herbs can be seen everywhere. Even many mountains are rich in spiritual veins. If you are lucky, you can dig a few meters inside to see high-quality spiritual stones. Of course, it is also accompanied by endless danger. In addition to being filled with toxins, it is also the garrison of groups of 5th and 6th order spirit beasts. There is still a hazy trail around the Xianshan group, and the cultivators who come to search for treasures are all trapped in this miasma. Those who are lucky can find a way out before their spiritual power is exhausted, while those who are unlucky are consumed by the poisonous gas until their bodies are exhausted and turned into dry corpses. At the center of this group of immortal mountains, there is a withered sect called Jinyan Sect. At this moment, in the secret realm of the sect, Si Huan looked at the little girl he had rescued. Her entire body had broken tendons and veins, her consciousness had been destroyed, and her internal organs were also shattered. If it weren't for the 9 Heavens continuation pill and one's own spiritual power package, it would have turned into a cold corpse long ago. Si Huan's eyebrows furrowed tightly together, and if it was just a simple damage to her muscles or internal organs, she could save them. If you encounter someone from the Soul Destruction Sect, once your divine soul is destroyed, you will undoubtedly die. That is to say, the probability of this girl surviving is not high now. It can be said that there is almost no chance. Even if a miracle appears and she is rescued, she is no different from a fool. If placed before, Si Huan was determined not to do anything uncertain, but she had detected a familiar aura in Xu Tiange before, which was also the reason for bringing her back. Si Huan became somewhat hesitant just as she was pondering. Xu Tiange on the bed spat out another mouthful of blood, soaking a large area of bedding. Help! Time is tight, and we cannot tolerate any further hesitation. Since we have already intervened, we cannot stand idly by anymore. With this in mind, Si Huan stamped her hands and infused spiritual power into Xu Tiange's body to stabilize some of her divine souls, while repairing her shattered internal organs bit by bit. Although the repair of spiritual power is only temporary, it is important to save her life first. It wasn't until Xu Tiange's breath completely calmed down that Si Huan finally stopped. By then, 3 days and nights had passed. In the following days, Xu Tiange needed to soak in a medicinal bath for 8 hours every day to further repair her internal organs and muscles, and the pain was even more unbearable than death. This is only the beginning, and the most unbearable part is the rebirth of spiritual roots and the reunion of Si consciousness. 3 months later Xu Tiange was soaking in a medicinal bath, her eyebrows furrowed tightly, biting her lips tightly, and beads of sweat as big as beans slid down her cheeks one by one. Si Huan stood by the medicine pool, appearing simple and elegant against the backdrop of her blue clothes. Even if it was just a common act of throwing spiritual pills into the medicine pool, when she did it, it exuded an ethereal aura, as if a heavenly maiden had scattered flowers to nourish the eyes. In 2 more hours, you will be able to take a bath, and you can endure it. Si Huan looked at Xu Tiange in the bathtub with heartache, trying to endure the pain. She is even younger than when she first entered the sect, but she can tolerate it much more. Every legitimate disciple of the Jinyun clan must go through the stage of medicinal bathing. However, the pain endured by Xu Tiange is even greater than theirs, which can be said to be 10 times more than theirs. Even if Si Huan couldn't bear it anymore, he understood that only this method could renew Xu Tiange's life. 2 hours is actually quite long. When taking a shower, Xu Tiange felt as if she had gone through the gates of hell. She could clearly feel the pain in every nerve in her body, like tens of thousands of needles, piercing into her body one by one, even her bones. Today is the last medicinal bath. Tomorrow, I will rebirth your spiritual roots for you. It will be even more painful than a medicinal bath. Can you bear it? At this point it was too late for Xu Tiange to agree to continue, but Si Huan couldn't help but ask. Xu Tiange nodded weakly and spat out a few words, I can. She can, because she still has to go home. Xu Tiange touched the jade pendant on her chest, which was her family heirloom jade pendant. It was only 1/3 the size of her palm, round, and snow-white all over. There were no decorative patterns on it, only a small hole was drilled at the top to tie a red rope. I don't know why the jade pendant also followed me through the book. Perhaps the key to going back is on this jade pendant. The unlockable path back home also needs to be built on the premise of destiny. In the cultivation world, strength is paramount. If she doesn't have enough ability, she may be killed by someone before finding a way to go home. Not to mention anything else, just Yu Qiankuan is the existence she currently cannot deal with. Xu Tiange vaguely felt that in the future, what was waiting for him was probably a more terrifying existence than this endless abyss. Due to the author's mistake, chapter 57 was missing one chapter. I will immediately supplement it once I apply for permission. Chapter 2. To live, to see people, to die, to see corpse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. To live, to see people, to die, to see corpse. Chaoyang Sect meeting Hall Yu Qiankuan, with a gloomy face, threw the teacup fiercely onto the ground. Waste. The sect has spent so many resources to cultivate you into yuanying, but now you can't even pass a small mistrace. All of them are waste. The elder Suli beside him touched his beard and comforted, Master, we can't blame them entirely for this. Didn't even you and I feel helpless in that miasma forest back then? But now that Ripple is still in the forest, if she has any ups and downs, how can I explain them to the former patriarch and his wife? And how can you explain them? But in the past 3 months, we have sent over 100 disciples with a golden pill stage or above to search for it, and there is not even any trace of the ripples. We even sacrificed 30.2 disciples. Su Li sighed lightly, feeling somewhat helpless. The ripples are very important, but the lives of the disciples are equally important. Yes, sect leader. It has been such a long time now, and I'm afraid Ripple is something we should consider for the living. After all, these disciples are the hope of the sect. Second elder Zhuang Mu spoke out to comfort. The fourth elder Su Desho also agreed, we cannot afford to sacrifice Su Lianyi alone for the future of our entire Chaoyang sect. Yu Qiankuan looked up at the 3 people in front of him and snorted coldly. When the sect leader and his wife led the flame beast away, they didn't see you standing up so righteous and speaking fair. Don't forget, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to sit here unscathed now, let alone the future of the sect. This statement made Su Li and Zhuang Mu blush. Indeed, when they went to experience with the elite members of the sect, as elders, they were leading the way for everyone, but to their surprise, they were able to encounter high-level monsters. If it weren't for the former sect leader and his wife leading the 9th-level blazing beast away, it might have been because a large number of sect elites would have been sent away on the same day. Even the 3 elders died at the mouth of the demon beast at that time. Only Su Desho remained dissatisfied, it wasn't me who led them away from the monsters. Since they were willing to sacrifice themselves for the righteousness of the sect, they must accept the consequences of this. According to what you said, does the patriarch and his wife deserve it? Yu Qiankuan raised his voice, what about the ripples? Does she also deserve it? Su Desho glanced at the 2 elders and saw that they were not looking askance, with no intention of coming out to speak. Everyone has their own destiny. With the cultivation of ripples, falling into that mist will never have a chance to live again. My opinion is that there is no need to sacrifice manpower to search. As for how to make the final decision, of course, it depends on your opinion, sect leader. After speaking, Su Desho brushed his sleeves and left. Yu Qiankuan patted the table and said, look at his attitude. Master, there's no need to be angry. After all, most of the sacrifices this time were from his disciples of the Sword Sect. I hope Master can show more mercy to those who are still alive. Su Li quickly came out to smooth the situation. Zhuang Mu continued to remain silent, with no intention of speaking again. Anyway, we must live to see people and die to see corpses. In the future search, the Sword Sect can send fewer disciples. Upon hearing this, Zhuang Mu wanted to oppose it. The reduction in the number of personnel in the Sword Sect must come from both of them. Who is willing to sacrifice their precious disciples? Unexpectedly, he was interrupted by Su Li just as he spoke out. Master. You know, the scariest thing about the Xianshan group is not the mistrace, but the latter part of the sentence, he said without further ado. When Su Li mentioned it, Zhuang Mu also remembered the legend about the Immortal Mountain group. There seems to be a demon sect there. It has been decided that starting from tomorrow, a team will be dispatched every 2 weeks to search for ripples in the mist trail. Those who refuse to go will have their sect resources halved within 5 years. After Yu Qianquan finished speaking, he didn't wait for the two of them to respond and left the conference hall directly. Left Su Li and Zhuang Mu looking at each other. In fact, they really don't understand very well. Su Lianyi's death is already a matter of certainty. Why does the sect leader insist on searching, even at the cost of sacrificing sect disciples? The dead have already died, isn't it good for the living to live well? But who makes him the master of a sect, having already decided, they cannot refute anything further. To prevent others from thinking that they are selfish, narrow-minded, and ungrateful, even the daughter of the life-saving benefactor can be abandoned. A noble and upright family is most afraid of losing a bad reputation. The two of them exchanged a glance and stood up together in tacit agreement, leaving the conference hall one after another. Only the 3 untouched cups of spiritual tea on the table were still steaming hot, like the ugly side of human nature, rising until it completely merged into everything. Jinyan Sect secret realm Xu Tiange is completely unaware of the outside world. She only knows that she was saved by the head of the Jinyan Sect, and the condition for saving her is to join the Jinyan Sect and become the inheritor disciple of the head. The Jinyan Sect is very large, and the 12 mountains stretching nearby are the boundaries of the Jinyan Sect. Jinyan Sect is very small, so small that there are only 2 people in the entire sect, Si Huan and Xu Tiange. Early in the morning, Si Huan called Xu Tiange to the Lingqi. Looking at the lingering mist and the deep green water in the pool, Xu Tiange instinctively swallowed his saliva. "Didn't you say you didn't want to soak anymore?" she asked. Being able to endure is one thing, but being afraid is another. Si Huan poured the pills from the 3 bottles in his hand into the spirit pool, and the water suddenly rolled over, as if there were some fierce beasts hidden underneath. No matter how painful it may be in a moment, remember not to resist, otherwise it is very likely to fail, Si Huan instructed. Xu Tiange nodded and said, "Remember." Then, she took a deep breath and sank her entire body into the pool, leaving only her head to breathe. Seeing Xu Tiange sitting still in the water, Si Huan made a complicated seal on both hands. After the seal was completed, she waved her sword finger towards Xu Tiange. For a moment, all the spiritual energy from a 10-mile radius converged towards her. After these spiritual energies entered Si Huan's body, they turned into a warm yellow light that shot out from her fingertips and shone on Xu Tiange. At the moment of entering the water, Xu Tiange felt a warm and comfortable atmosphere enveloping her. Before she could enjoy it, the comfort immediately transformed into a sense of electric shock, fiercely attacking her body. She couldn't bear it and almost bit her tongue. A faint electric current flowed through every meridian of Xu Tiange. As the current flowed, her limbs couldn't help but twitch. The currents ran for an hour before finally converging into the Dantian. There should have been a cluster of spiritual energy there, but now there is only a gray and dark area left. When the current enters, it flashes a subtle light red fluorescence as if it has been powered on. As the current continues to converge, the fluorescence increases and changes from light red to deep red. At this point, Xu Tiange was so painful that she almost fainted. She had accidentally been electrocuted while unplugging the plug before, and felt as if she had been bitten by something. Her body was very uncomfortable, and it took her arm almost 10 minutes to recover. The feeling now is even more intense, let alone these currents rushing through her body. If her body had not been tempered before, she might have been dried to the point where her meridians were broken. Si Huan saw that the fluorescence inside Xu Tiange's body had condensed into a solid red ball. She flipped her hands and made a new print. The beam of light above Xu Tiange's head gradually faded away until it completely disappeared, and then Si Huan withdrew her hand. The spiritual energy that was originally gathered dissipated in an instant. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Deadly Current. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Deadly Current. Si Huan exhaled lightly, wiped the fine sweat on her forehead, and prepared to go into the pool to retrieve Xu Tiange. However, as soon as she stepped out, she stumbled and had to quickly take out a gathering spirit pill to take. Master, is it over? Xu Tiange felt the electric current gradually disappearing from his body, and he relaxed completely, but he didn't dare to completely relax. You can come out now. Upon hearing Si Huan's answer, Xu Tiange felt truly liberated. She tried to stand up, but found that her body was out of her control. Master, I can't move anymore. Xu Tiange's voice was slightly aggrieved, and his small body couldn't withstand the turmoil. She silently summarized in her heart. Still too weak. What's going on? Is it a process error? Si Huan was startled and immediately wanted to step forward to investigate, but as soon as he took a step forward, he was blocked by a powerful force. In an instant, a large amount of the dissipated spiritual energy converged again, and the pond churned even more fiercely than before. Xu Tiange also noticed something was wrong, and her voice was filled with tears. Master, what's the situation now? There shouldn't really be a monster in the pool, right? The center of the spiritual energy gathering this time was Xu Tiange, and she was enveloped by a strong spiritual energy like a tornado. The current once again hit Xu Tiange's body, and the pain hit him again. Master, Xu Tiange wanted to call for help. As soon as she opened her mouth, a large amount of spiritual energy was poured into her, choking her so much that she almost choked. She had to keep her mouth shut and let the stronger electric current run through her body. And the Si Huan by the Lingqi almost immediately offered the Luan feather fan to scatter Xu Tiange as soon as the spiritual aura enveloped them. But those spiritual energies seemed to spontaneously form a powerful barrier, resisting each of her attacks until she was about to unleash her fourth attack with a seal. Suddenly, a spiritual light flashed in her mind, recalling the records in the Sect book. It is said that when the founder of the mountain regained her spiritual roots, she also encountered a similar situation. The previously dissipated spiritual energy converged again, and after that, another spiritual root appeared in her body. Si Huan is not sure if Xu Tiange's situation is the same at this time, but he dare not act rashly again. What if it is? Isn't it that I'm going to ruin her luck? If not. If anything unexpected happens to Xu Tiange, it's best to spend another 300 years of effort to save her. So, Si Huan put away the Luan feather fan and pushed out a barrier, meditating on the spot by the spirit pool, continuing to protect Xu Tiange. This time the current came more fiercely than before, and Xu Tiange's whole body couldn't help but twitch. The electric currents continued to rush into her body, still running along her meridians for a small week before converging to her Dantian, where a dark red sphere had already condensed, and was now driven to the other side. In the empty area, a light blue glow gradually appeared, just like before. As the current continued to gather, the fluorescence gradually turned dark blue and finally condensed into a solid ball. However, the current did not stop this time, and they continued to run wildly in Xu Tiange's body. Every time Xu Tiange ran, her meridians would expand and become stronger. Every time Xu Tiange almost faints from the pain, he will be awakened by the pain, which is very unreasonable but also very reasonable. I don't know how many laps I ran, but finally there was a trend toward stability. Xu Tiange's heart, which had previously breathed a sigh of relief, suddenly began to tug again. Because their small weekly run ended, they immediately began the big weekly run without stopping. For someone who has not yet started practicing, running the Great Xu Tiange is a deadly behavior, and it is far more painful than what they have endured before. Those currents seemed to be tireless and disregarding her life and death, circulating non-stop over and over again. Gradually, the two scattered balls, one red and one blue, also spun around in her Dantian, and the pain gathered from her whole body to her Dantian. As the two spheres continued to accelerate, they gradually merged together and became a whole. Although it is a whole, it is also distinct, like a gossip map, each occupying its own side. And around them, there was a layer of light yellow halo lingering, until this light halo became solid, and the current completely calmed down. And Xu Tiange, as early as when the two round balls were chasing each other, couldn't bear it and fainted, soaking himself in the spirit pool. As soon as the spiritual energy dissipated, Si Huan immediately rescued Xu Tiange. Fortunately, she was not killed by pain or drowning. The whole heart that Si Huan was hanging on finally fell back. Xu Tiange fell asleep for 5 whole days. During this period, Si Huan kept coming to check her condition, and every time spiritual power was injected into her body, it showed that she was only sleeping normally at this time. But who can sleep for 5 days? On the evening of the 5th day, Si Huan stepped out of the room with his front foot, and Xu Tiange woke up leisurely with his back foot. She opened her eyes and looked at the unfamiliar room, momentarily stunned. After a while, she realized that she had already traveled. A sense of desolation arose in her heart, and she tried to hold back the tears in her eyes, repeatedly cheering herself on. After a while, when his emotions stabilized, Xu Tiange moved his body and sat up. Miraculously, there was no expected soreness or weakness in his limbs, but instead an indescribable pleasure and relaxation. Although she is still her, it seems that her entire body has become much lighter. It seems that although the experience was unbearable, the benefits gained were also incomparable. Xu Tiange stared intently at the two-colored small ball inside her body. She had also read many cultivation novels before, and she speculated that this might be a manifestation of spiritual root mutation. She checked her meridians again, which had doubled in size and looked much stronger. If she were to take a medicinal bath again, it would probably not be as painful as before. Xu Tiange doesn't know what spiritual roots she currently possesses, she doesn't even know how to absorb spiritual energy. Thinking of these things, Xu Tiange felt a bit flustered. She really hoped that she would have a once-in-a-lifetime lucky opportunity when she went out soon. She rushed straight to the realm of incarnation and then easily returned home. Isn't it not that this outrageous wish cannot be achieved in the cultivation world, but the most common thing is luck? Maybe she actually caught her. Do whatever you say. Xu Tiange landed on the ground, put on his shoes, got out of bed, and ran to the door in 3 steps. As soon as I opened the door, a stronger spiritual energy rushed towards me than in the room. It felt even more comfortable than taking a few deep breaths of fresh air in the most spacious modern place. Leaving aside the chance, she was first shocked by the scene before her. When she first joined the Jinyan sect, she was brought back by her master on the brink of death. At that time, she temporarily lived in a small wooden house next to the first peak medicine bath, which was convenient for daily medicine baths. Her range of activities was limited to that small courtyard. When she reunited with her spiritual roots, it was her master who used a tool to fly her to the 9th peak spiritual pool, and then she fell into a coma. Let me put it this way, Xu Tiange has been in Jinyanzong for almost a month and has hardly had any opportunities to go out freely. Previously, his health did not allow it. And now Pit Avoidance Guide. 1. This book is not just a catchy article. I don't want to turn the female lead into a ruthless killing machine from the beginning, let alone for someone who has received modern education since childhood. Killing is really a matter that needs to be paved. So it may make people feel that she is too soft-hearted, but there will definitely be changes in the middle and later stages, too. This article is gradually transitioning and growing. No character is initially outstanding catching, each with its own shortcomings, but as experiences accumulate, they will all become better and better. 3. The new author, Xiao Bai, is not very good at controlling the plot and rhythm, and in some places, the plot may be slightly delayed. 4. Once again, it should be emphasized that the protagonist is not someone who is always strong and has a certain growth path. Above, those who mind should enter with caution. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Reunion of Understanding the Sea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Reunion of Understanding the Sea. Xu Tiange looked at the wonderful scenery in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. Tao Yuanming is truly not deceiving me. Xu Tiange stepped on the vast grassland, and the place he was in seemed to have been neatly carved out by someone from the mountaintop. On both sides were towering mountains, filled with spiritual trees. Some had already borne fruit, while others were in bud, emitting a leisurely light. On the right side of the mountain is a waterfall, where the rushing water converges to form a lake. At the end of the lake, there is a vertical cliff that flows down. The water in the lake overflows and flows down the cliff, forming a second waterfall. Behind Xu Tiange was the wooden house he lived in, which had 2 floors. Behind the wooden house was also an unfathomable cliff, but it seemed to be protected and restricted. A spirit rabbit jumped over and was blocked, saving a small life. Here, there is abundant spiritual energy and immortal aura. It's really beautiful. Xu Tiange ran wildly on the grass, tired of running, and lay down on the spot. The thick grass was like a pure natural mat, and the sunlight shone through the clouds, plating her with a layer of golden edge. It was like a Xian girl playing in the human world, tired and taking a nap, making it difficult to shift her gaze. Xu Tiange closed her eyes comfortably, and in no time, the sunlight above her head was blocked by a large shadow. She opened her eyes displeased. "Haven't you slept enough yet?" As if seeing Si Huan for the first time, she also appeared in front of her against the light, like a heavenly god descending. Xu Tiange smiled and revealed his cute tiger teeth. "Master." Si Huan sat down beside her and asked with concern, "How do you feel?" Xu Tiange used his hands as a pillow, leisurely and carefree. "It's so beautiful here." He completely forgot the homesickness he had just woken up with. "I'm asking how you feel physically," Si Huan Fui said, somewhat worried about the intelligence of his legitimate disciple. Speaking of this, Xu Tiange remembered the 2-colored ball inside his body and stood up to inquire with Si Huan, "Master, a small ball of 2 colors has emerged in my body." As early as when Xu Tiange was still asleep, Si Huan had already explored her body thoroughly, and naturally knew about her spiritual roots. That's a manifestation of your body having dual spiritual roots. 1 blue and 1 red symbolize 2 spiritual roots, 1 water and 1 fire, which means I'm a mutated genius, right? Everyone can only use 1 spell, but I can use 2 at the same time. Does that mean? The beginning of the conversation was snatched away by Xu Tiange. Looking at the excitement and anticipation in her eyes, Si Huan swallowed the original words. "Yes, you're very impressive," nodded in agreement. "Yeah. Indeed, a genius is a genius." Xu Tiange was very satisfied with his adventure. Although he didn't have the opportunity to step into the realm of transforming gods at once, being able to use 2 types of spells at the same time was also very cool. Watching Xu Tiange dance with joy, the corners of Si Huan's mouth also rose. "Well, isn't it just a pair of spiritual roots?" The founder of the mountain was also a pair of spiritual roots. Didn't he still beat those who claimed to be orthodox cultivators to pieces? What the ancestor can do, so can her disciples. Next, we will reunite with Shi. Si Huan stood up and made a decision to lift Xu Tiange up as well. In theory, a person who is attacked by the soul-destroying technique should have their soul severely damaged. Even if it has not been destroyed, their spirit should still be unstable. Looking at Xu Tiange, except for being somewhat unintelligent, his divine soul is completely sound and shows no signs of damage. Si Huan felt that there was something inside that she had overlooked, but she didn't have time to delve deeper. "Ha!" Xu Tiange's entire small face furrowed together, and reuniting with Shi sounded very painful. "Okay. But Master, I just woke up." Recalling the experience of rebirth of spiritual roots before, Xu Tiange would rather fall off a cliff 1,000 times than feel it again. Before she could catch her breath, new pain was waiting for her again. "This matter cannot be delayed," said Si Huan urgently. Xu Tiange had no choice but to obediently follow the instructions of his superiors for the aircraft. Still in the spirit pool of the 9th peak, still rolling pool water. Understanding the sea is not like spiritual roots and meridians, its pain will only be more severe. Si Huan instructed, that's the same sentence, don't resist, you'll have to endure any pain. Xu Tiange obediently closed his eyes. I'm ready, master. Si Huan only gave Xu Tiange a light glare and once again snatched the lead, without arguing with her. She held a spirit stone and set up a gathering formation around the spirit pool, and then arranged the 5 colored stones in the direction of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth before turning her hand to seal. In the moment of printing, a huge golden light shield enveloped the world. In no time, a beam of light fell from the sky and landed on Xu Tiange's head. The familiar needle pricking sensation hit, and Xu Tiange only felt a tingling sensation on her head, without any imagined pain. However, she didn't dare to relax and still felt the fine needle pricking with her nerves tense. A tiny ray of light first broke through the shackles and arrived at Xu Tiange's sea of consciousness, where the original spiritual consciousness had dissipated and entered the eyes, emitting a gloomy aura. But due to this faint light, it brought some vitality. Subsequently, more and more faint lights appeared, illuminating this place brightly. The marks on Si Huan's hands kept changing, and finally a little fluorescence gathered from her hand, flying towards Xu Tiange's head. The first fluorescence entered Xu Tiange's sea of consciousness, circling around the bright mass, hovering for a while before retreating to the edge of the sea of consciousness. In no time, more and more fluorescence emerged, as if hungry for a long time and finally seeing food, rushing towards the bright spot. Fluorescence and faint light intertwined and fused, gradually condensing into a cluster of sea consciousness nebula. The beam of light shining on Xu Tiange's head gradually dissipated into nothingness. Upon seeing this, Si Huan stopped his movements and threw 2 soul-gathering pills into his mouth. After a while of slowing down, he finally withdrew the barrier. Xu Tiange in the pond opened her eyes, and a hint of turbidity shot out of her eyes. She stretched lazily, feeling that her mental state was particularly strong at this moment. Xu Tiange's hand couldn't help but support his head. It turned out that this was the feeling of having spiritual consciousness, and it wasn't as painful as imagined. Even rounding it up can be called completely painless. Xu Tiange turned around with joy, ready to report good news to Si Huan, but saw her weakly supporting the rock wall, her face pale. Master! What's wrong with you? Xu Tiange got up from the pool and ran to Si Huan's side to help her. Si Huanchong comforted her with a smile and said, "It's okay, it just consumed too much spiritual power. Just take a break and it will be fine." As she spoke, Si Huanyu waved her hand, and the 5-colored stone easily returned to her hand. The golden barrier shield also dissipated in an instant. "How are you?" Seeing that Si Huan was still caring about him at this moment, Xu Tiange's heart warmed up. "Master, I'm fine. It doesn't hurt much." Upon hearing this, Si Huan looked up at Xu Tiange in surprise and said, "There's no pain at all." Xu Tiange scratched his head awkwardly and said, "Actually, it's a bit like a small needle prick, but it can be tolerated. Let me take a look." As he spoke, Si Huan's fingertips gathered a spiritual energy and leaned towards Xu Tiange's head. When he saw the sturdy sea consciousness nebula, Si Huan was completely stunned. Everyone's sea consciousness was a chaotic mess of stars, how could Tiange be so different? But it is obvious that her intelligence is stronger than everyone's. Si Huan concealed his surprise and withdrew his hand. "How about master?" Xu Tiange was like a child seeking praise. "Great. It's really me." Si Huan couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as he spoke. "Master." Outside the Xianshan group, various sects and sects of all sizes can feel a large amount of spiritual power fluctuations emanating from here. They all speculate that there may be treasures emerging, but they are afraid of the elusive mist and a large number of monsters, so they dare not go to investigate. Only some fearless cultivators want to seize the opportunity and venture alone into the 100,000 immortal mountains. Thank you. Lan Fengxi's recommended ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Grand Library Pagoda. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Empty Dantian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Empty Dantian. This is the top floor. Xu Tiange looked around and found that the space on the 18th floor was nearly half smaller than the first floor, but much higher than the first floor. At the top of the tower, there was a huge bright yellow ball with runes drawn around it in the void. The runes kept spinning around the ball, causing Xu Tiange's eyes to blur, and he quickly withdrew his gaze. Unlike the first floor, which is surrounded by bookshelves from top to bottom, this floor is empty with only a pale yellow stone platform in the center, suspended with 2 books. Si Huan walked forward and took out one of the books, handing it to Xu Tiange. This is the secret mental technique of our sect, and only the legitimate disciples can cultivate it, he said. Xu Tiange looked at the book in his hand, which had a quaint color and was not signed. What kind of mind technique is this, master? Strange, whose mind doesn't carve a name. Oh, it's from her family. Si Huan stared at the book in her hand for a while and sighed lightly. Holy Heaven Mind Technique. After speaking, her gaze turned to the surroundings of Tabi, as if recalling something. Xu Tiange followed Si Huan's gaze, and only then did he realize that the walls were densely carved with murals. Is this? Xu Tiange walked up to carefully examine, seemingly recording various moments since the founding of the Jinyan sect. Before she could understand, Si Huan pulled her back. With a serious expression on his face, he instructed, remember, before reaching the level of Yuanying, you can only practice the upper half of the Holy Heaven Mind technique. After reaching Yuanying, you can choose whether or not to practice the lower half. If you don't practice, your cultivation will always stay at Yuanying. But with the Holy Heaven Mind technique as a guarantee, you will definitely be the best among the Yuanying in the lower immortal realm. What if it's cultivation? Xu Tiange asked. She is someone who wants to find the way back home, and her cultivation should only stay at Yuanying. If practiced, the cultivation will be returned to the golden elixir, and it will be twice as difficult to cultivate the Yuanying again than before, and even unable to improve further. However, once the shackles are broken, the benefits obtained are infinite. Ah! Will you still be expelled from cultivation? Xu Tiange held the hand of the Holy Heavenly Mind technique tightly without realizing it. Xu saw her concerns, and Si Huan said again, there is never a chance to get something for nothing in the world. You must always remember this sentence. If you want to get an opportunity, you must exchange it with something of the same price. Just like when you met me, why didn't you lose your life in exchange? Xu Tiange pondered over what Si Huan had said, as if he understood something. Just like my dual spiritual roots and spiritual consciousness, I also paid a painful price to obtain them. Seeing her quick enlightenment, Si Huan was very satisfied. As a cultivator, be careful not to have narrow eyes. Sometimes unpredictable dangers in front of you may also hide tempting opportunities that people are eager to seek. Xu Tiange nodded and said with a clear expression, I understand, master. Judging from her appearance, she had completely overcome her previous difficulties, and Si Huan continued to introduce, the Holy Heavenly Mind technique is to absorb the power of sunlight and run it in the body for a small week before converting it into spiritual power, which means, so, as long as there is sunlight, I can have a continuous stream of spiritual power. Seeing the beginning of the conversation being snatched away again, Si Huan lightly tapped Xu Tiange's forehead with his finger and said, from now on, I will not interrupt when speaking as a teacher. Okay, master, please continue, master. Si Huan went to the window, looked at the trees and grass of the Jinyan sect, and slowly opened his mouth after a long time. What you need to know is that in the whole world of cultivating immortals, the mind skills that are converted into spiritual power by absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon are all extremely desirable. Before you complete the cultivation of the Holy Heaven Mind skill, you are safe. As long as you don't expose yourself, no one can know what mind skills you are practicing, but... She paused for a moment and turned to look at Xu Tiange. After seeing her clear eyes, she swallowed the words she wanted to say deeply. Well, it's better not to give her such a heavy burden so early. Let's talk about it when her wings are full. However, Xu Tiange was still waiting for her words. But what? Master. But the future is unknown, and it could be extremely dangerous. Are you ready to enter this cruel path of cultivating immortals? The heart that Xu Tiange was carrying suddenly fell. Just now, when he saw his master's solemn expression, he thought it was something big. Ready. Si Huan replied lightly, then let's start practicing now. Here. Xu Tiange was a bit surprised. Is her master in such a hurry? Here, is it immediate now? Now immediately. Xu Tiange. This is not as expected. Don't you choose a good time to meditate outside and absorb the essence of the day? Although she is in a hurry, she is not so rushed either. Xu Tiange vaguely felt that compared to her, master was the one who was in a hurry. But she was also very insightful and didn't ask again. Since her master is willing to follow the teachings, is there any reason why she shouldn't study hard? No. So Xu Tiange obediently meditated on the spot. But as soon as she sat down, a force lifted her to the center of the stone platform. At the same time, the rune on the bead above her head spun even faster, and in no time, a beam of light shot straight down, enveloping her whole body inside. Don't be in a daze, absorb it quickly. Si Huan's voice rang out, pulling Xu Tiange back from his trance. Oh. Xu Tiange quickly closed his eyes and felt the pure breath of the sun. In an instant, she opened her eyes again, feeling so aggrieved that she said, Master, I can't absorb it. In Su Lianyi's memory, there was a method of absorption, but the mental techniques they practiced were different, and Xu Tiange dared not blindly follow. Didn't I give you a book just now? Oh, that's right. Xu Tiange unfolded the book that gathered energy and read it word by word. Si Huan let out a long sigh, his tone somewhat helpless. If you bring the book close to your sea of knowledge, the content inside will be presented in your mind. If it weren't for personally probing Xu Tiange's divine sense, Si Huan would have thought she was a fool at this moment. Ah! So magical. Xu Tiange immediately followed suit. Sure enough, as soon as the book approached the sea of knowledge, it absorbed the knowledge on its own and presented it directly to the mind. As long as Xu Tiange closed his eyes, he could automatically know the next step. It's amazing. If there were such methods in modern times, wouldn't everyone be a university bully? Cough cough, pulling away, Xu Tiange quickly regained his mind and followed the steps above to suck in a ray of daily breath from his mouth, guiding them to find each big hole in his body, and then transforming them into needles and fiercely piercing them into the acupoints. Pain. My master never said that even the spiritual energy can be so painful. However, those pains were fleeting, as a new breath immediately entered her 7 holes, enveloping the major acupoints. Xu Tiange felt an indescribable pleasure all over her body. After the breath was drawn into her acupoint, she sank a ray of fluorescence from the sea of consciousness into the Dantian, triggering the 2-colored bead. As the bead slowly rotated, it seemed as if every pore in the body had been opened, absorbing a warm breath of the sun. Based on the trajectory of the previous current surge, Xu Tiange guided these daily rhythms to flow smoothly for a small week, and finally slowly converged into her elixir field, wrapping the 2 dual-color small spiritual balls. She happily curled up the corner of her mouth, and the method of transforming spiritual energy was not difficult. Gradually, Xu Tiange realized something was wrong, because all the spiritual energy she absorbed was absorbed by the dual-colored ball. Looking at the empty Dantian, she was confused. Thank you. Book friends 1070 and Sanyang Benzin have cast recommended votes. Love Ni Meng. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Monster Roar. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 7 Monster Roar. What should we do about this and this? Xu Tiange had doubts in his heart, but he didn't dare to stop. He continued to absorb his daily breath and then switched to Dantian, still being sucked by the two-colored ball without a trace left. Hey, she doesn't believe it anymore. Xu Tiange continued to repeat the same steps, but after an unknown amount of time, the two-color ball finally had enough to eat, and spiritual energy gradually gathered around it until the Dantian was filled with spiritual energy, and it slowly stopped rotating. Xu Tiange opened his eyes and found that his gaze was slightly clearer than before. The sky outside had gradually darkened, and Si Huan still stood by the window. She called out softly, "Master. How is it?" Sensing the spiritual power fluctuations around Xu Tiange's body, Si Huan was somewhat surprised. Refining the second layer of qi. Generally speaking, the probability of failure is high when converting spiritual power with daily breath for the first time, and many people get stuck in the step of inducing spiritual consciousness to activate spiritual beads. It is not easy to stabilize one's cultivation on the first level of qi refining, but how could Xu Tiange break through to the second level of qi refining in one fell swoop? Good. Si Huan gradually regained his senses from surprise, his face full of joy. This disciple was so energetic that he didn't waste all his effort to save her. Xu Tiange originally thought that her speed was too slow and was worried about being blamed. She only breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Si Huan's smiling face blooming. "Master, am I now a true cultivator of immortality?" Si Huan gently stroked her head with a gentle expression. "Yes, you are already a qualified cultivator. And, you are excellent." The master and apprentice were immersed in a warm atmosphere when a red halo suddenly exploded in the distant mountains. Si Huan's face immediately collapsed and he said, "A group of ants who don't know whether to die or not dare to break into our sect protection formation." The halo in the distance gradually increased, and even the mournful cries of demon beasts could be heard. Xu Tiange was somewhat worried. "Master, will they attack?" "Don't worry, even if they have the ability to reach the foot of Jinyan Sect, they will definitely not be able to climb the mountain." "Why did they break into the Jinyan Sect? Are they from the Chaoyang Sect?" Xu Tiange didn't forget that he was the target of Yu Qianquan's pursuit. In terms of the description of the universe in the original work, he could never rest assured until he saw her body. Relying solely on Chaoyang's sect doesn't have the courage. "Don't worry, as long as you are in the sect, even if the transformation of the spirit comes, it won't harm you at all," Si Huan said with great confidence. She knew that the movements made during the day would attract attention from the outside world, but she never expected those people to be found so quickly. Xu Tiange's worried heart was completely calmed down. Just by looking at this library tower, you can tell that the Jinyan sect must have a considerable foundation. Otherwise, in this world of cannibalistic cultivation, it would be difficult for only Si Huan to hold on to such a grand cause. Xu Tiange looked at the halos that rose up one after another, and his eyes were filled with envy. What a powerful cultivation is needed to achieve this. Don't envy them. In the future, you will be even more powerful than every outstanding person in the cultivation world. The sound of encouragement from Si Huan came from above, and her words seemed to carry some kind of charm. Xu Tiange suddenly stopped envying others. "Well, I will." Xu Tiange clenched his fist. She will, because she possesses the resources of the entire Jinyan sect and such a responsible master. So, why not? Miss Trace Periphery Yu Qianquan and the disciples of Chaoyang's sect rushed to the outside of the Xianshan group. This was originally the weakest place for the mist and miasma, but the previously misty miasma had now turned dark yellow. It goes without saying that the toxic gas is even worse than before. At this time, people from the other two major sects and some scattered cultivators also gathered here without moving forward. Yu Qianquan approached the crowd and exchanged a few pleasantries before heading straight to the topic. "What's going on with this fog?" Humph. Xianggu, the leader of the Wuwei sect, twisted his facial features in anger. It's not just those casual cultivators who are arrogant. When they saw a white flower with a colorful halo, they fought hard to grab it. As a result, when the crowd gathered, the flower instantly absorbed their spiritual energy. Those with high cultivation were lucky enough to escape, while those with low cultivation could only be sucked dry alive. Then the flower transformed the absorbed spiritual energy into miasma and released it, creating disappearance. Upon hearing this, the people of Chaoyang sect finally realized that there were still many dry corpses scattered in the nearby jungle, roughly 50 or 60 of them. Everyone took a deep breath. A young disciple during the foundation construction period asked, "But it's just a small white flower, how powerful is it?" "That's not just an ordinary little white flower, it's a Juyou flower." A tall and upright young man walked out of the Wu sect. He had sharp edges and looked handsome at first glance, but every time he looked at him, he would be more attracted to him. He looked coldly at the withered little white flower in the middle of the group of corpses and said, "It relies on sucking on the resentment and spiritual energy of the idle cultivators in this forest, transforming them into the most poisonous miasma and releasing it." That's right, there are detailed records in the Shuxian Poison Chronicle, but everyone knows very little about it. Eugenia also walked out of the crowd. She looked at the young man, nodded lightly, and politely greeted, "Senior Brother Wen." If Xu Tiange was present, he would definitely recognize this person as the male lead of the original work. "Wen Liza." Wen Li nodded back and said, "Sister Yu. Is everyone just waiting like this?" Su Li asked out loud. "They traveled 1,000 miles in a flying boat to come over, wouldn't they have returned without even stepping into the forest? Do you have any way to pass through this misty trail? Then quickly use it to show everyone." The one who spoke was the elder moon shadow of Xianyue sect. She was so angry that Su Li couldn't say a word, and her whole face instantly turned red. Damn it, isn't it that his disciple accidentally injured her disciple while practicing in the secret realm last time? For those who cultivate immortals, bumping and bumping are inevitable things. Is it necessary to be so resentful? Unfortunately, Yueying is an 8th level alchemist, and her cultivation level at home has also reached the level of Yuanying. What is the concept of an 8th level alchemist? Looking at the entire cultivation world, not to mention level 8, even level 7 alchemists are among the few. If one can achieve level 9, then in the lower cultivation world, they will definitely be top-notch. Most alchemists spend most of their time studying alchemy and rarely have extra time to practice spells. Most high-level alchemists have a stable cultivation level in the golden elixir, while moon shadow is a type of abnormality in the realm of metamorphosis. So she has always been the object of many aristocratic families and scattered cultivators vying to please, and even the other 2 major leaders are polite to her. Su Li dared not argue with Yueying, so he immediately fell silent and retreated to the back of the crowd. At this moment, deep within the originally quiet fairy mountains, there came the roar of demon beasts, as if warning those who were deluding to step into this forest. But at this moment, no one can listen to advice. Thank you. Recommended tickets for worthy 245 Baiyun and book friend 1070. You guys dote on the author too much, moving me. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Conquering Juyou Flower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Conquering Juyou Flower. Just as a group of people were helpless against the miasma in front of them, more and more cultivators rushed over, including various sects and aristocratic families, with the majority being scattered cultivators. Individual cultivators are not like cultivators who have joined a sect. They can rely on completing sect tasks to exchange for cultivation resources, and all resources and opportunities for individual cultivators have to be found by themselves. Therefore, they will work harder than them 100 times. If we were to switch to other scenes, the scattered cultivators would rush in and out, but looking at the cannibalistic jungle in front of them, everyone tacitly stopped their steps. As the number of people gradually increased, Wen Li stood up and said, "Master, I have a plan. Oh. Let's talk about it. Xianggu touched his gray beard and looked at him expectantly. For this disciple, Xianggu is 100% satisfied and proud. At the age of 12, when Lisa bowed to his throne and successfully gathered his spirit to step into the first level of qi refining. At the age of 15, he broke through the foundation building, and at the age of 18, he had already led everyone into the golden elixir. Now, at the age of 20, his cultivation has reached the middle stage of the golden elixir. Not to mention beating all the junior brothers and sisters who entered the sect at the same time, he left the elites of other sects far behind. He can be said to be a genius from heaven. You should know that according to the normal progress, if you start practicing at the age of 10, there are only a few people who can reach the golden elixir by the age of 30, and they are even considered outstanding in the eyes of everyone. But Wenli only took 6 years, who else could be so perverted? Coincidentally, my disciple also has a plan. I don't know if it's consistent with what senior brother Wen thinks. Eugene also spoke up. Xianggu patted his forehead and said, oh, how could he forget that Chaoyang sect, the heavenly beauty, is also a perverted existence. She is only 17 years old now, and has read a variety of books from all over the world. Her cultivation has also stabilized in the middle stage of the golden elixir. Strictly speaking, Eugene is even better than his disciple, and every time he thinks of Xianggu, his heart feels depressed. Wenli is a person who lives up to their name. They have always been polite, gentle, and humble. He arched his hand and said, Junior sister Yu, let's talk first. Eugene didn't hesitate to be polite either. She carried her hands behind her back, with a calm and confident demeanor. The reason why Juyou flower is terrifying is that no one has found its weakness. Many people tend to have preconceptions that it is a wooden spiritual plant, so using all the metal spells to attack is ineffective. However, in fact, it is a water spiritual plant. And what kind of water? I believe everyone knows that nature is made of wood. As soon as the words fell, there were voices of discussion in the crowd, most of whom were questioning why Juyou flower, a plant family, belonged to the water system. Eugene further clarified his doubts and said, water can gather and accommodate all things. Everyone, think carefully. Why can it quickly absorb spiritual energy? And how can it convert the spiritual energy it absorbs into miasma? And haven't you noticed that the poisonous miasma in the forest should have withered long ago? Why are they still living well? Everyone was lost in thought, recalling what Eugene and Wenliza had said before. Looking back at the jungle in front of them, although there were no birds or beasts, every blade of grass and every tree was lush. How could there have been any signs of decline? So everyone came back to it. Does this mean that as long as you use higher level wooden spells to attack, you can defeat this terrifying Juyou flower? But this is a bit too easy, isn't it? Someone asked a new question. But once it enters a certain range, it will imprison our spiritual energy and consume it. How can we solve this? Don't panic, everyone. When Lisa spoke this time, isn't there still Elder Moon Shadow with the senior sisters of Xianhua sect here? The Moon Shadow, who was named, looked impatient and said, what's wrong? Can we still rely on this group of women to enter the forest? Yes, Xianhua sect is a women's sect, and the reason why it has become the third major sect is not only because of the strong foundation accumulated by its ancestors, but also because of their alchemy. The female disciples of Xianhua sect are only divided into 2 factions. One faction focuses on studying alchemy and does not have high requirements for cultivation, as long as they can achieve some self-protection ability of the golden elixir. The other faction focuses on swordsmanship, which is used to protect the disciples of the sect's alchemists. Even if it's just a 3rd-level alchemist of the Xianhua sect, it's a pleasing object to other sections. Although other sects also have their own alchemists, if compared to the alchemists of Xianhua sect, they are not at the same level. Because the inheritance of Xianyue sect's elixirs is the most orthodox and complete, even the location where their sect is located is also the most suitable place for cultivating spiritual medicine in the entire Quanxiu Immortal realm. How can outsiders compare to the Xianyue sect, which occupies all the time, geography, and human harmony? Although everyone openly flatters the cultivators of the Xianyue sect, many people privately believe that they are just a female sect and cannot afford much trouble. These naturally cannot conceal the fact that the Moon Shadow, who is already over 100 years old, does not like people from other sects at all. On this trip, in addition to her and the other 2 Yuanying elders, Yue brought 10 Xianyue sect golden pills and 10 foundation building pill masters each, while the rest were all sword cultivators. After much thought, Yue couldn't understand why relying on these disciples with low cultivation was the key to unlocking miasma. You don't need to be too troublesome, just let the senior sisters of your sect use the technique of paralysis to numb the Juyou flower for a moment, and the rest will be defeated by the efforts of the Wu sect and the Chaoyang sect. Upon hearing Wen Liza's words, Yu Jinhe also nodded. Since their ideas were consistent, it proved that this method must be feasible. The leaders of Chaoyang sect and Wu sect are both present. Although they are not sure if this method will work, they are not the ones who will lead the way. If they don't, they can withdraw in time. Moon Shadow shook her sleeve and didn't want to buy it. Humph, anyone can use the numbness technique. Why do we need the help of Xianyue sect? Only the Xianyue sect possesses the purest earth-style magic. This is not a compliment. The founder of Xianyue sect obtained a treasure that could develop a spiritual medicine to improve the earth-type spiritual roots. The first thing that a disciple of the Xianyue sect does when they join the sect is to improve their spiritual roots. Nowadays, in the entire world of cultivating immortals, only Xianyue sect has the ability to completely make up for the deficiencies in their disciple Tulingen. Can this method be guaranteed to be effective? What if there are casualties among our disciples? Yue frowned, her face even more displeased. Wen Li slightly bent down and respectfully said, Elder Moon Shadow can rest assured of this. As long as we can make Juyou flower numb for a moment, it won't be a problem to defeat them with our abilities. I have heard this before. What I am asking now is, what should we do if there are casualties among our disciples? Yue increased her volume. Seeing the tension in the atmosphere, Yu Jinhe quickly spoke up and said, My disciples of Chaoyang sect are willing to protect me in front of the senior sisters of Xianyue sect. Oh. Moonlight looked at Yu Qianquan and said, Does what your daughter said count? Yu Qianquan felt the enthusiastic gaze cast by the disciples of Chaoyang sect towards him, moved his lips, and finally answered, Let's do the math. Wen Li also refused to be outdone. The disciples of the Wu sect are willing to protect their senior sisters and senior sisters. Xiang Gu's face turned red with anger once again. But as the chief disciple of the Wu sect, he has spoken his words. It's hard for him to retract them in front of so many sects, aristocratic families, and scattered cultivators, right? How embarrassing is that? So, Xiang Gu also responded with a cold face. From then on, Yue Ying's face finally softened. She walked up to the disciples of Xianyue sect and raised her voice, saying, If there is anything wrong, except for the disciples of our sect, you can immediately retreat regardless of anyone's life. The disciples also responded loudly, Yes. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Great Golden Thighs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Great Golden Thighs. The disciples of Xianyue sect are never afraid to die, but they cannot let others act as gunmen. Yue Ying could see the unwillingness of the other 2 sect leaders. Although she was willing to protect the disciples of Xianyue sect in response, she couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't cheat in private. That's why she publicly reminded her disciples. The people of the other 2 sects naturally understood the meaning in the Moon Shadow talk, and Xiang Gu and Yu Qianquan's faces turned black, but they also secretly felt guilty and lacked the confidence to argue. After all, at the beginning they did have the intention of letting the Xianyue sect members explore the way, and it is also appropriate for them to only care about the lives of their own sect members during times of crisis. The most straightforward of them may only be Eugenia and Wenliza, so they don't feel embarrassed about the implied meaning in the moon shadow talk. Although there are thousands of gathering flowers in the mist trail, the coverage of miasma released by each flower is limited, and they only need to clean up the ones on straight roads. Juyou flower can only temporarily crush for 12 hours and cannot be completely eradicated. That is to say, their trip will only last for 12 hours. Before that, regardless of the chance to obtain high-quality artifacts, one must immediately retreat from the depths of the Immortal Mountain. The group had different ideas, but their ultimate goal was only to break through this mist, and their fate would depend on themselves. At first, everyone was still a bit afraid, until the first group led by Eugenia had successfully defeated a Juyou flower, and then they all became bold. After becoming proficient, the cleaning speed gradually increased. Those small sects and scattered cultivators saw that the road had been cleared and followed suit, without feeling any problem with their lack of effort. After all, it's not they who cleared the way for those people. The group of fairy mountains that everyone feared before has now become less terrifying. They even feel that this trip will be very smooth. After all, the misty traces that make the lower cultivation world tremble with fear are so easy to break through. What else can't they deal with after that? The storage tower of Jinyan Sect. As the name suggests, this is a place to store various types of pills. Coming out of the library tower, Si Huan directly brought Xu Tiange here. She had just broken through the second level of qi refining, and at this time, she needed pills to stabilize her cultivation. The pill storage building has a total of 7 floors, and although each floor is only half the size of a library tower, the amount of pill storage in the lower 3 floors alone almost exceeds that of the entire Quanxiu sect. The first layer stores second-order pills, the second layer stores third-order pills, and so on. All the way to the 6th and 7th layers, there are a large number of 7th and 8th order pills, and even many 9th order pills. Although the body of the Chu Dan Tower may not be as grand and imposing as the library tower, each floor from top to bottom is covered with dense runes. Even Xu Tiange, who was not proficient in talismanship, felt the immense power hidden above. She had no doubt that even a joint attack from the 3 deities would not be able to defeat this building. Similarly, there is also barrier protection at the entrance. This time, Xu Tiange was not stunned anymore and closely followed Si Huan's footsteps. Otherwise, she is afraid that if she steps on the wrong brick and triggers the mechanism, she will be hit by the runes on the tower and covered in holes, which will not be worth the loss. Unlike the library tower with stairs on both sides, the walls around the Dan storage building are filled with layers and rows of Dan cabinets, with only a circular opening in the middle that is high enough to see the top floor. Similarly, there is a huge floating light ball on the top layer, surrounded by a circle of illusory runes that constantly rotate around it. These are all pills accumulated by the sect over the years. Si Huan introduced their names and types to Xu Tiange one by one. Each type of pill is stored in a separate area, with tall pill cabinets arranged neatly. Each drawer contains 3 bottles of pills, each containing 90 pills. And around each row of cabinets, there is a faint aura of spiritual energy, which means that the pills inside are all top-quality spiritual pills. How strong does this need to be in order for each one to be of high quality? Even the famous alchemy sect Xianyue sect cannot guarantee that all the pills in their sect are top-grade spiritual pills. The pills on the lower 5 layers are not very rare. You can exchange them for other treasures. Of course, there are countless treasures in the Jinyan sect, and you don't need to go out and exchange them for anything. And the last 2 layers of pills, you can use them for nothing to eat and play with, Si Huan said lightly, but every word she said gave Xu Tiange a hard blow. Master, why don't you listen to what you're saying? Who has nothing to do with taking pills for fun? Moreover, even with their support, they may not be able to finish so many pills until they die. By the way, Si Huan turned back and added, although taking too many pills can improve one's cultivation, this method is not advisable. However, it is advisable to eat more pills to strengthen one's health. At this moment, Si Huan and Xu Tiange stepped onto a stone platform with a sunflower totem engraved on it. The stone platform slowly rose, and with the two of them, they ascended directly to the 6th floor. Xu Tiange's eyes were stunned. Isn't this a modern elevator? It seems that there is something about the people in the cultivation world. The pill cabinet on the 6th floor looks much better in texture than the one on the 1st floor, covered in dark red antique patterns. Each drawer even has a restriction outside to prevent the spiritual energy of the pills from leaking out. This is the 7th level spirit and soul pill, which can strengthen the body. Si Huan opened a drawer and took out a bottle of the pill and threw it to Xu Tiange. Xu Tiange honestly caught it, and as soon as she opened it, an indescribable fragrance wafted out. She took out one and put it in her mouth. What does it feel like to melt at the entrance? She truly experienced it this time. As soon as the pill entered her mouth, it transformed into a spiritual energy, rushing into Xu Tiange's limbs and bones. When all the medicinal properties were absorbed, she couldn't help but stretch lazily. The feeling was similar to sleeping in a refreshing footrest. Si Huan smiled and looked at her, his eyes full of indulgence. Remember, you can only take one pill a day, he said, good master. Xu Tiange firmly held this bottle of spirit pill in his hand. Si Huan stared at her hand for a while, as if suddenly remembering something. He hurriedly took a ring from his own hand and handed it to her. This is a top-grade Sumeru ring, and the space inside is enough for you to store the entire library tower. Xu Tiange held this small, inconspicuous ring and once again froze. In the original work, Xu Lianyi, who had abundant wealth, cherished a lower-grade Sumeru ring the most, which was about the size of a 300 square meter room, storing half of her value. With just one move, Si Huan was able to preserve the entire library tower as a samurai precept. Master, this thing is too valuable, I dare not take it. Xu Tiange swallowed his saliva and handed the ring back. Si Huan waved his hand nonchalantly and said, it's okay, there's as much as you need in the warehouse for this thing. If you like it, you can go and get more later. She could see Xu Tiange's love for this ring in his eyes. It was just a small Sumeru ring. As long as it is what her disciple wants, as long as it is in the cultivation world, Si Huan can find a way to get it. Woo! Xu Tiange was so excited that she burst into tears. What amazing golden thighs did she hold on to? A humble writer, seeking collection online. Thank you all for casting the recommendation vote AI and I Meng. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. True high-quality artifacts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. True high-quality artifacts. Xu Tiange was still immersed in a moving emotion when she was thrown another medicine bottle in front of her. She hurriedly raised her hand to catch it. This is a 7th level spiritual pill that can stabilize cultivation. Take one quickly, said Si Huan as he walked to another cabinet to search for it. Xu Tiange stared at the medicine bottle and pondered for a moment, saying, but master, can my body withstand it? In Xu Lianyi's memory, she once stole a 5th order pill from her father and almost died without exploding. Fortunately, Xu's father discovered it quickly, otherwise Xu Lianyi's life might have been taken care of. What my master threw at me were all high-level pills. Is it really okay to take them? In theory, with your cultivation level, you cannot withstand the spiritual power of high-level pills. Fortunately, when I treated you before, I quenched and strengthened your body, and when I added the spiritual roots, you were strengthened in your muscles and meridians, so you can rest assured to eat. After saying this, Si Huan walked back with a box and lightly patted Meng Jinshu's head. At the same time, the box was also handed over to her hand. What is this, master? Xu Tiange caught off guard and almost couldn't bear the weight of the box, dropping it to the ground. She quickly lifted the box. After pondering for a while, Si Huan finally spoke up. There are 6 bottles of 8th order illusionary beauty pills inside. After eating them, everyone will see your transformed appearance. Except for the period of transforming the spirit, no one can see your true face. Xu Tiange couldn't help but sigh. Good thing, this is it. This way, she won't be afraid of being recognized by the people of Chaoyang's sect when she goes out in the future. You can only take 1 pill a day, and 1 pill lasts for 4 hours. Eating too much is ineffective. These 6 bottles are currently the only ones left in the world of lower cultivation, added Si Huan. Xu Tiange silently calculated in his heart that for a bottle of 90, 6 bottles are 540, which is enough for her to use. The next second, Si Huan said again, these are enough for you to eat Yuaning from the golden elixir. If you practice faster, you may not be able to eat it and transform your spirit. Xu Tiange only then realized the sentence in Si Huan's words, the only remaining thing in the world of immortality to be repaired. That is to say, once these 6 bottles are finished, the entire world of cultivation will not be able to find any extra ones. Can't I refine this illusionary beauty pill from the immortal realm? Upon hearing Xu Tiange's question, Si Huan lowered his head and couldn't recall anything. After a while, he smiled helplessly and said, it's not that he can't practice it, it's because the elixir has been lost. Xu Tiange was so frightened that he pushed the box into Si Huan's arms and said, then I absolutely can't take it. I'm afraid such a phantom beauty pill can be sold at a very high price outside. Si Huan pushed it back and said, no matter how high the price is, it won't buy back your life. Take it. But Xu Tiange still wanted to refuse. However, Si Huan's tone could not be refused. This is the master's destiny. If you feel sorry, you should focus on practicing in the future and strive to break through the Yuaning as soon as possible. Perhaps you can still leave some for your disciples and grandchildren. Xu Tiange could only honestly put the box into the ring and said in a muffled voice, I know master. Seeing her movements, Si Huan said again, now drop a drop of blood on the ring. Ah! Xu Tiange didn't understand. Si Huan couldn't help but knock on her forehead and said, give the ring to Shimi to recognize its owner. Otherwise, anyone who finds this ring can open it and take away the things inside. Oh, oh, oh. Xu Tiange immediately followed orders. After absorbing her blood, the ring emitted a dazzling white light that instantly extinguished. This is the successful recognition of the master. In the future, you can use this method when you receive top-grade spiritual tools. After saying this, Si Huan shook her head. She was really worried more and more about whether she, the only disciple, could survive in the cultivation world. Understood, master. Let's go, take you back to rest. The master and disciples stepped on their magical tools and flew towards the peak where Xu Tiange lived. At this moment, the sky had completely darkened, but Jinyan's sect miraculously lit up everywhere like someone lighting a lamp. Master, why are there so many lights still on in the sect? Si Huan glanced at the bright light under his feet and explained, at the beginning of the reign of Emperor Taizong, in order to save manpower and material resources for lighting lamps, our ancestors buried moonlight stones on both sides of the roads at the major peaks. Moonlight stone Xu Tiange knows. A kind of spirit stone that was born in the South China Sea and absorbed the pure essence of the sun and the moon. If it takes a long time, it will become a spirit stone when it gives birth to intelligence. A star that can emit dazzling light, with a hard surface that can last for tens of thousands of years. The moonlight stone is extremely difficult to find, and not to mention the millions of high-level sea monsters in the South China Sea, the moonlight stone itself is also very good at hiding. According to the original work, Eugene accidentally obtained the moonlight stone during an opportunity, and many people were envious that she could have this opportunity. Some even opened tens of thousands of high-quality spirit stones to buy it. TSK, the founder of the Jinyan sect is really a big shot. Xu Tiange felt that if one day she really couldn't afford to eat, picking up a moonlight stone from a peak would be enough for her to squander for a long time. In no time, the peak where Xu Tiange lived arrived. Si Huan didn't intend to stay and left a sentence. "Rest well, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning to practice swordsmanship." He turned around and prepared to leave with his sword. However, as soon as he ascended into mid-air, he saw a bright purple beam of light gliding across the sky, straight towards the west. Wherever the purple light goes, the surroundings are illuminated like daylight, and one can even feel its majestic aura. Xu Tiange couldn't bear it and knelt down straight, as if being forcibly pressed down. At the moment of seeing this purple light, Si Huan's figure immediately stopped. Until the beam of light disappeared, she finally regained her senses and turned around to remove the pressure from Xu Tiange's body. For the first time, he sternly instructed her, "From today on, without my orders, you are not allowed to leave Jinyan Sect for half a step. Do you hear me?" Seeing Si Huan's serious expression for the first time, Xu Tiange nodded calmly in fear and said, "I understand, master." As soon as the words fell, Si Huan disappeared with a whoosh, as if rushing to do something urgent. However, it wasn't Xu Tiange's turn to worry about these things. She honestly returned to her room and lay on the spacious bed that could accommodate 3 people. Outside the Jinyan Sect, within the Xianshan jungle. After breaking through the mist, everyone dispersed in all directions. The vast majority of them were stepping into this group of fairy mountains for the first time. Even if they couldn't find high-quality artifacts this time, they must explore the resources inside this group carefully. Therefore, wherever the crowd went, all the spiritual fruits and elixirs were looted, and some even uprooted the spiritual fruit trees and threw them aside after picking them. Even the disciples of the Chaoyang sect and the Wuwei sect among the 3 major sects are no exception. Seeing this situation, Eugenia frowned displeasedly, but did not speak up to stop it. She did not want to do anything that offended people. The goal of Xianyue sect is very clear, which is to come towards high-quality artifacts. Therefore, as soon as they emerge from the mist, they choose a desolate path and move forward alone. And the other 2, fearing the danger here, chose to travel together. Just as everyone was immersed in picking spiritual fruits, a bright purple light flashed across the sky, like a flying star, falling rapidly towards a certain point in the west. Those with high cultivation can barely stand up, but the pressure in the beam of light makes them unable to move. Those with low cultivation all kneel together. Everyone was pondering what the origin of this light was, until Yu Qianquan shouted, "This is truly a top-quality artifact in this world. Thank you again for your collection. Thank you to the cute ones who sent recommendation tickets for everyone's privacy, I won't call each one." End of this chapter.